Yeah, hi everyone. Um, just to recount it for you to get a sense of what we are about to discuss. Patanjali was set up. Next month will be the 18th anniversary of Patanjali. Now, for an FMCG company, that's pretty young. So the process of creating trust, uh, especially in products that you use on your skin, that you ingest, is a difficult one. It's different from, say, selling durables, right? So, but Patanjali is now, so it started off from Ayurveda, and now after at least one major acquisition, its turnover is now in excess of 30,000 crore. And Anita's familiar with the company. She's been there for 3-4 years. And I'm going to basically trying to understand for a company of that size, especially in FMCG, what role do news channels play in getting a brand message across? So let's start with fundamentally what the products are, okay? And what are the kind of target audience? I mean, is there a difference in the target audiences? Could you just give me a sense of what the product range is? What are the cohorts which consume that? Is there uniformity or are they totally different?
Firstly, thank you for having me here,
Yeah,
Shrikant.
thank you for being here.
It's been an interesting 3-year journey at Patanjali. Loads of challenges, that come your way. But having seen the organization from close quarters, I think one can just say wow, yeah, because what the other multinationals or FMCGs did in, say, 30, 40 years is what they did in
Sure.
good,
Very short.
15, 18 years. And we've been trying to figure out from the outside to say, what is the success story? Yeah, that today, in fact, just to correct you, last week's market cap was at about 50,000 crores.
No, I was talking turnover, top line.
So I'm just saying that turnover will be a little lesser than that. So typically, I think, you just look at Patanjali and say, oh, it's Ayurveda. And it's got its Ayurvedic products. And yes, they are in the FMCG sector. But actually speaking, there are far too many, verticals. So they started off as Ayurveda because that was when, years back with the struggle that both the management gurus, I would say, had in the initial stages. And when they set the whole stage for Patanjali, it actually started with Ayurveda, with them giving Ayurvedic medicines and treating patients to making Chavanprash and, selling it and stuff like that. So that, to my mind, was the germination of the organization. And slowly and steadily, I think the yoga, the way it's got projected by Swami Ramdev ji, is something that has taken precedence over everything else. Because that is something which has given the Indian households a lot of loyalty, a lot of trust. So you have very, very loyal customers of Patanjali. So I come across customers who are extremely loyal. And they say, oh, I don't even travel without a Dantkanti when I travel. That is the level of, loyalty that they have. And there are a diverse, group of customers who say, we don't buy Patanjali at all. Yeah, so I think it's the influence and the trust and the faith that stemmed from, them being selfless and trying to do everything for the well-being of the people, to getting on to really looking at not charging any premiums. I think the products today also, if you compare in the marketplace, are far less priced as compared to others in the same category, because the whole idea is for them to be non-profit and work for the benefit of the masses at large. So that is another one. And then, of course, I think 2 years back is when they bought Ruchi Soya from NCLT. And I was amazed because I had just about joined them 3-4 months down the line. And suddenly, when the FPO happened, the share prices opened up. And after that, suddenly you see that it almost doubled, And in 18 months, they just turned around the entire organization that was, bankrupt to showing profitability in a quarter. So I also keep wondering, I'm sure they're doing something right? So it's a big mystery there, but I think it's just the faith, the trust, the push, the hard work that these people put in, behind this whole thing, which is today made them the conglomerate that they are. So there's Ayurveda, there is FMCG, so they are operating in almost every, consumer good that you may want. I mean, from atta to biscuits to oil to ghee to name it, honey and, toothpaste and aloe vera gels and personal care and skin care and hair care. I mean, you name it and you have it. I think we've got about 2,500 kind of, these varied brands.
But, so the faith in Baba Ramdev, okay, the connection with yoga, Ayurveda, I mean, you see a connection clearly there. But, as a brand custodian, right, and who also is involved with the media, who oversees media, how that connection, I mean, isn't it difficult to stretch and to create trust perhaps in, Ayurvedic toothpaste, fine, but in biscuits, edible oils, etc., doesn't it make it harder to carry forward that trust?
Actually, not really, Shrikant, because, the way the products are made and the way they are positioned, I think is very different. For example, let's take example of biscuits. While many biscuits that you consumed in the marketplace have white flour, right, maida, as you say. Now, Patanjali biscuits are all 100% wheat. And here we are talking about, how it is very difficult to digest white flour as compared to wheat, and there's true element of milk there. They say that if you consume 1 pack of Patanjali, glucose biscuits, then it's equivalent to 1 glass of milk. And there's enough scientific evidence to prove that. Okay. Because they run a research center with 500 scientists, which was a revelation to me when I went there. Completely state-of-the-art stuff that is there. Then if you look at the oil category, that they have, in terms of the content of, X oil versus Y oil and the mixing. I mean, I'm not getting into details of that, but I think the combination works out to be far more healthier than the combination that happens in the other brands. Okay. So I think it's also got to do with the kind of products they place in the market. Okay. So it's not really got to do only with the trust, because the trust can lead you to a certain level. Okay. But then, as they say, you can take the horse to the water, you can't make it drink.
Yeah, sure.
So the thing lies in the pudding.
So when you come, I'm going to come to the media part of it, but when you look at the consumers of products across product categories, how would you define them? What's the image in your head?
So I think the core, as in media terms we say primary audience and secondary audience, I think the core is really women 25 plus. Yeah, because there is so much FMCG contribution which goes out in the marketplace from the organization. But however, I think when we plan, we also plan for all adults. Because if you look at medicines, there are all kinds of age groups and genders who will try those medicines. It's largely when you come to FMCG that the core becomes women. So I think broadly speaking, it's all adults. 18 plus onwards, because for example, aloe vera gel that they have, I mean, there is no competition. We've got 98% market share. Yeah, so there, and that is a product which is completely catering to the youth. So there you look at a 15 plus as well. So it's a combination, and you know how to place your products.
So if you were to look at, tell me about 2 products at extreme ends when it comes to the type of audience that you have. Could you describe those 2?
So, for example, I would say that we don't have anything in the men's range, not anything particularly in the men's range. I would differentiate it in the categories where I think medicines fall into one category. Okay. Medicines, and they have wellness centers, and they're all connected. So they are in a different league, and here FMCGs fall into different categories. Okay. So if I was to look at purely FMCG advertising, then my core audience becomes women. 25 plus kind of thing. Right. The women in the house who takes decisions or goes out and buys it, or whoever is buying it for her. Okay. But if you look at medicines, then I think the age group is slightly higher. Okay. And it also is all adults, because there are men and women and children. So the decision is taken by the parents to, look at the treatment of the children. So the medicines and the wellness treatments that they have at their wellness centers. Okay. So that is a completely different category, because the need there is very different. Okay. It's treatment, it's cure, or it's prevention, whatever it is. Vis-a-vis an FMCG where, the category defines itself.
So your primary medium has been, driver medium has been television? Or is it digital?
No, now? I think there's been a decent combination of print and television. Okay. So I think we are probably the only FMCG which advertises like crazy on print. I mean, you see an ad every weekend. and that has as I think Aditi was mentioning earlier, that, the credibility of the written word. I think from many years when television was not what it was, and the advent of television, the way it is moved then onto online and digital, etc. From then onwards, I think that whole credibility got built because we were advertising in print, and it was reaching to our audiences because it also had, a fair amount of...
But you have stayed with print, although its relative clout has been in decline for a very long time.
Yes,
you still stayed with it.
We've stayed with print because I think it's the way the organization has been constituted. Because we've reached to the grassroots, and everybody upfront. And same goes with news, by the way. I mean, we were the only, I think, client who patronized news. And I used to, when I was not with Patanjali, I used to keep wondering and saying, news? And it's full of Patanjali, why?
And why? So why?
I also couldn't understand. And that's when, I, in fact, was asking Swamiji one day, and I said, I haven't understood this. He rapped me and he said, you media guys, tumko lagta hai tumko sab kuch aata hai. But the fact is that when he started with news, when nobody else in the category was starting with news, his was a very different thought. I mean, we always used to take news earlier for the trade, right? I mean, that's how, keep the trade happy, you have an element, component of news coming in.
So what?
But his thing was...
could you just, to digress, could you just expound on that, to keep the trade happy?
Yeah, so earlier I said when news was what it is, not what it is today, we all used to, as media planners, take it as trade should be happy because you know that the trader, your distributors or retailers, he will watch news, he has this little television set in his shop, he will watch news. So you have to keep the trade happy because then when they are pushing your brand, then you would tell them, dekho are aaj tak pe dekhna acha, ABP pe dekhna acha, yahan wahan dekhna. So they would feel happy that, the product or the brand that they're stocking is also, being supported.
Reassuring,
yeah. So that was more for trade. And till, of course, news spread its tentacles and that time he said that I had decided that while my trader guy is there, the trade guy is whom I'm, talking to and targeting, but, he's also a family man. So he goes home and he talks to 4 people at his house, which includes his wife, his son, his daughter, and, that is how word of mouth spreads for my brands. And actually, thought and I said, I mean, there's absolute logic in this, right? So that is a sheer logic that he used. And of course, news has been efficient, in terms of, we all used to take it for adding frequency. So you had your reach channels and you would add news for frequency. But I think he just took that earlier on and now, I mean, I think lots of news channels have him to thank for the kind of advertising that happens.
So over the last 3-4 years, has your view of what news channels can do for your brand and your products, has it changed?
Yes and no. Firstly, like I said, this was a new view for me and interesting, of course.
Very interesting.
And, the more I see it, I think we can do a little better in terms of the formats that we run on the news channels. But I think it's no longer being seen as only adding frequency. Because the way, you're getting regional channels added on, you're getting, it's almost like your local news or the local live channels which are adding on. I think that reach, they've done a great job in terms of adding those elements to reach, the last mile. So that, I think, is a big role.
So the more local it is, the more attractive it is.
Absolutely. And because we, as a company and as the product categories that we operate in, masses is what we cater to. So to that extent, I think it makes a lot of sense.
You said something about formats, that we could do some better in the formats. Could you just explain that?
Yeah, so I just find, and that's a personal view, I find there's just too much clutter on news channels. I mean, if you're wanting to concentrate on the content, whatever that content is, whoever likes that content, whatever kind of content it is, I mean, there is so much of L-bands, Astons, logos, I mean, you name the formats and they're there. I understand for sure, and it goes for all the guys who advertise, whether it is the Saria guys or whether it is the cement guys, everybody is using it. I think, to that extent, if I look at it from a media planning perspective, I get OTS, right? I will calculate it from that perspective. But if I go look at it from a brand perspective, also I'm seeing, itni bari I'm visible. But if I look at it from a consumption perspective, because finally it's the audience that we're talking to, it gets just too cluttered and it takes away from the essence of the content that any channel is.
I think one of the things I found is that, like sometimes television screens resemble the way websites used to be. They're just banners everywhere. But I found that when I consume any content online, and when you get bombarded with banners on all sides, it's a very funny thing. It's like you develop tunnel vision. You just block out. If there's one banner, you might see it, but if there are 8, you just tend to narrow focus and just stick to the content.
Yeah, you actually struggle to focus on the content that you are there for to watch, You're right. I mean, after a point, excess of everything is bad. After a point, it becomes a blind spot.
So has the role of news channels from your point of view, has it changed now? Or does it still serve the same purpose? Do news channels?
No, I think the way the news is getting consumed today, I mean, I've been hearing people saying 37% women audience, 40% women audience. Earlier, we never used to take news channels for women audiences. It was essentially male,
Right.
So I think that is added on. So obviously,
This is the online part.
No, I'm talking about
TV, linear TV.
I'm talking about linear TV.
Sure.
So there, of course, that plays a role. Then you're talking about if you're trying to reach urban households and you're talking about connected TV, right? So all your OTT platforms, most of them, the Indian OTT platforms have, they run a Republic or a Aaj or whatever,
Correct.
or an ABP on them. So there it probably becomes a little better because, you don't have all the different formats, so the concentration is far better.
Right.
And also as extensions of maybe the apps that they have, or maybe on digital or on their websites, etc. So there, each one is now coming out as a role being played. So there was a talk about, doing nugget size, so news content,
Okay.
smaller size, I mean, shorts or reels or whatever. And there has always been this talk about 3 seconds attention span for any brand on specifically on digital and online. I kind of beg to differ a little now, because ever since reels have come up, I think that 3-second concept seems to be, not really the crux of everything. Because when you're watching reels which are of interest to you, and you also integrate brands in that.
Correct.
But I think that increases the attention span. However, I think we have to be mindful of, as Gaurav was mentioning, that 5 minutes and I don't know what more to read or what more to consume. I mean, LinkedIn, I see posts which run into paragraphs and paragraphs, and you go to a certain level and then say, God, I don't think I want to read more. So I think it's the consumption habits are also defining the content. So whether if you're catering to the youth, it's very different.
Okay.
If you're catering to a 70-year-old or a 60-year-old, he has all the time in the world to go through the entire thing. So I think those things you have to keep in mind.
When you look at digital formats or trends in digital, what is the stuff that excites you? You have a sense of, isko is karenge, so this might get us something, a little spike in attention or whatever else. Is there something that particularly, of course, I mean, a lot of consumption is happening, but is there something within it that interests you, that you say, this is interesting, this is exciting?
There is no one size that fits all, Shrikant. There is just, I mean, I can't just say that, there is this spark, and if I go with this, everything will happen. And the beauty of digital is it allows you to make course correction as you go by. So if you are running you have DCOs these days, and if you're running your creatives and that creative is not giving you, the kind of response, you immediately change. It allows you to do that.
Correct.
Whereas in the case of television, I mean, there is a lag,
Sure.
you will find a lag. And in print, what's happened has happened, you can't do much about it. But I think there are, to me, the foremost thing that kind of would lead to any kind of spark is the content.
All right.
It is how differentiated your content or messaging is. And this is not something new I'm saying. We've been talking about this for years. Yeah.
Right.
At least the years I've been in the industry, we've always been saying, you put a content that, attracts the audience, only then will you be able to drive home a message. Right. So I think it's the kind of content and how differentiated you are, because I've seen reels running, I've seen, 3-seconders failing, I've seen 2-minuters doing very well. So it's very different. If you're doing storytelling, then people are willing to watch, the storytelling if it interests them. So I think it's just completely got to do with the kind of content.
So, no discussion, I think, today will be complete without bringing up measurement, because I think it has come up in every single session. So just from an attendance point of view, I have to do this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the question you have to ask.
I know. No, so whether in terms of integration, it need not be not the whole discussion, but just even if you have some stray thoughts on measurement or integration, or just as an advertiser, how do you look at it?
You know, it's a tough one to answer.
Are you satisfied with the way things are?
Do you have a choice?
There's that. So
do you have a choice? You don't have a choice, right? Something is better than nothing. So honestly, if you ask me personally, through my career, I've always treated measurement as a trend setter. You know, it is a trend. I mean, what will a program with 1 rating and then the other program next to it with 2 rating sees a 100% jump? Yeah. Finally, it is 1 rating and 2 rating, right? You have to just see what the content is, the audience. I think qualitative factors, I know Ruda Mehta taught us in Ogilvy that, you know, qualitative factors are very important. You can't run a computer ad on a mythological, content, you know. So she's always told us, and I've actually not seen that coming through anywhere, to say that there is a certain element of weightage that you need to give to the context in which you are advertising. So I think, we have no choice but to be happy with what we have. There are enough number of fights happening. There is enough discussion happening on, you know, how to integrate, because the panels are different, the audience sizes are different, the way the research is done is very different. So how will you bring it to one particular, agnostic kind of a platform where you can put in everything? Of course, now we're talking about, you know, how digital is adding incremental at a far lesser cost on television. So everybody is using those models, but if there is an industry standard, I don't think there is one where you can integrate the whole thing and bring it there. But I think, to me, it's a question of an art and science both put together. There is something called gut, which all of us have forgotten. We only talk about data. Yeah, but I think it is very important to understand what will work with your experience. You know, what should work. Like, you know, I think Manoj was mentioning about what content will work.
Yeah.
You know the editors know, for example, what content works. I think you only were mentioning, somebody was mentioning.
Somebody did
I think Avinash was mentioning this. That editors know what content will work, right? So I think some element of gut needs to be applied, and we do a lot of that at Patanjali, honestly. I mean, so I don't think there is any answer to measurement unless everybody will be willing to pay money for it, because as said, it's non-profit. And why would they be non-profit? Yeah? Business is never non-profit, right? So unless everybody pays for it, and the costs are huge, and that's got to do with the diversity and the length and breadth of our country, because you cannot really copy-paste everything in everybody, culturally so different. So this debate will continue.
So does the nature of content, I mean, a channel is more serious, the other is a little more sensational, whatever, you know, in that range of, let's say, seriousness and sensationalism, okay? This is very subjective. But does the content matter anymore? Or is it mostly around ratings?
No, but are you talking about particularly about news channels?
I'm talking news channels.
News channels.
Correct.
No, I think it matters. See, there are serious viewers.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm just taking, it's not really a news, this thing, but Avinash was mentioning about Money Control, right? And he's got huge amount of subscriptions there. I think it's about 90% subscribed channel big, or whatever, very big. But that is because there are serious consumption happening on that kind of content, right? But there are pockets, especially in tier 2, tier 3 markets, where sensation plays a big role, because it's news plus entertainment.
Right.
Yeah. There are urban audiences, who get irritated with sensation.
Okay.
Yeah, or loud shouting or whatever, and they say, what the hell? You know, you're watching news because you want to know or you want to seek information, but this is like, you know, so much of noise. And there are guys who love debates because it's noisy.
Correct.
You know, so it's actually, there is different audience that consumes different kinds of, from sensation to seriousness.
Okay. We have, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
So we have just a minute and 19 seconds now. Would anybody have any question for Anita? Do you have anything? No, nothing. Just
good, nice.
You
have a question?
Yeah. So the thing is that when you look at news going forward, just one last thing. If you were sitting, I always like to ask this question. If you were having the same conversation 2-3 years later, Would it be any different if you were discussing the role of news channels in a plan for an FMCG brand such as Patanjali? Would it be very different? Would our conversation be very different?
Again, yes and no. Last year when I was on this platform, we were
talking.
Yeah, I was talking about content, and we were talking a lot about the sensationalization of content. Today, I think the news channels better this thing sense has struck. I find that element of sensationalization reducing a bit. I don't know. I don't consume news too much on television because television almost is passé. I don't know when I watched linear television last. So
I can see the news headline tomorrow. Television is passé. Susmita, please.
So I've actually been from the era of Doordarshan where the news used to happen at 8:30, right? To the Star News and the Zee News formats when cable and satellite happened, to today the way everybody, Bharat XYZ is happening, right? To the online and the digital piece and the apps, and in shorts and stuff like that. So things change. I don't know how dramatically they will be changing.
But you find it a little, somehow they have toned down a little.
I think they have.
Yeah?
I think
That's
they
interesting.
have. So next year if you have me on this panel, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. We'll do that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.